If you are looking for FC25 coins as well as other game keys, currencies, gift cards, and more, check out u7buy.com. Doing so via the link in the description would really help me out. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Now, I was going to do another tutorial video, but I realized something with the attacking AI that made me need to put out a video on this first. Let me get to showing you some clips here. Now, in my past weekend league, I had a lot of people in the live stream commenting that my wingers were staying really surprisingly wide despite being on inside forward. It took me a while to realize what it was, but we'll show it here. You see how the Messi and Rafinha, both on inside forward attack, are on the outside of the fullbacks? And with inside forward, I would rather have them be on the inside of the fullbacks. The reason for that is because they can't cut inside, because EA messes with your attacking AI and doesn't let them, because the center mids are taking up those areas instead. So let's take a look at this clip in full here. You'll see Messi kind of fakes making a run inside and then pushes all the way out to the outside of the fullback, and then it ends up being Hamsik who makes that run instead. And I think it's because of Hamsik's attacking AI instruction where he's on playmaker attack for this role. And I think it's because of that instruction that it's telling the team he's the one supposed to be attacking these zones, not Messi, despite Messi being on inside forward. The center mid instruction overrides that for the winger. You'll see the same thing with Belmati here. She's making a run, she's sprinting all the way up the field. Rafinha's not being the one to cut inside, he's actually kind of pushed outside. It looks like he's going to make that run inside. No, back out. So when you're building your team, you really this year have to keep in mind what zones you want your players to attack and make sure you don't have other players actually occupying those roles instead. Let's just take a look at another couple clips here. So look at this one here, right off of kickoff. See, Messi is all the way on the other side of the field. This is not where I want my inside forward to be. Now it's off of kickoff, that's fine. But him being wide allows the attacking instruction of Hamsik to push up into that space instead, which kind of keeps Messi on the outside of the fullback. Now that Hamsik drops off, you'll see Messi pushing up to actually where I want him to be. This is the inside forward role. This is good. This is where I want him. But the actual attacking instructions of them don't allow for that until Hamsik stops his run. Now, we can debate whether it's Messi's run on the outside that causes Hamsik's run on the inside, or if it's Hamsik's instruction on the inside that causes Messi to be on the outside in the first place. But the point being, having both of them on the attack instruction trying to get into the same area is just breaking what I'm actually trying to accomplish on the field. Now, this clip here I think is an example of two different things going on, or two different instructions messing with where the players are actually positioning. Now, Hamsik plays this pass down, and we're going to watch him just kind of stutter and linger. This makes no sense to me. It's like he can't decide where he's going. You see that little hesitation, kind of moves back, kind of moves forward. Now he's just jogging and lingering. Now he's kind of sprinting forward. And you see that sprint forward from him. I know it's behind the controller overlay. Pushes Kimmich back. So again, they're not occupying the same zone. The AI, whatever is happening off the ball here, requires them to occupy different positions. They are like, it does not understand how to move them into the same spot, which is such a shame because that is what I want. I want to have unique passing lanes. I want to have little triangles. I want them to make runs off of each other and do these little free roam movements. I don't mind if it's Kimmich moving forward and Hamsik goes and replaces him. I don't mind that. But the fact that they're just kind of lingering and not getting into a good position or rotating and swapping each other's positions when they shouldn't be is just such a shame. They've made the system so bad, but you have to keep this in mind when you're building your own tactics. We'll take a look at Messi here. Messi's all the way on the wing. He's outside of the fullback. I want him on the inside. He's going to move in because Kimmich, I think, replaces Hamsik's role here. Hamsik should be the one getting forward into the space, but the game is telling, for whatever reason, Kimmich to get into there instead of him. And what that does is, he's on false back here. False back's not going to get as far forward as the, playmaker attack role, right? So he's maybe able to move like this far up the field, whereas Hamsik would actually be able to move up into the space fully. So because it's Kimmich occupying that space, now Messi's on basically on the inside of the fullback. He's inside. It's fine for inside forward. I would rather his positioning be a little bit different. If I were EA, I would make this different myself. But for what the instruction is, where he is here is fine. Like, I can play like this as the formation. But it's only because Hamsik was told not to make that much of a run forward because Kimmich was occupying that space instead. You'll see a very similar thing here from Rafinha, same idea. He's wide because it's going to be Bonmati making that run into that space. Even though she's so deep here. We'll just watch. He's on the outside of the fullback, same thing. You know, not really cutting inside at all. Now, it's fine. Like, this is a well-built attack. But the reason he's not cutting inside is because somebody else is occupying that space. So another example here. Rafinha starts so wide, and this is kind of the issue I have with the inside forward, just default, even without other players' positioning getting in the way. He's so wide, and he's staying on the outside of the fullback, even though nobody's occupying that space. That's just how the instruction works this year. That's how wingers work. I wish he were cutting inside. This is not due to the instructions of anybody else, I think. It's just, you know, he starts his run on the outside, and then he moves inside. That's what they're told. That's how EA programmed this. But you'll see, now he's in exactly the position I want him to be, because Bonmati is not occupying that space. If she were instructed, and again, it might be the same false back, like Rolfo is being told to run up into the space instead of her, and she's not moving as far up the field, right? I think it's probably the same thing happening there. You know, Rolfo occupies that space, but not as aggressively as Bonmati, and now Rafinha's cut all the way across the field. And you can see during the build-up, again, like this. Again, I would have the attacking positioning a little bit different, how they're kind of making runs off of each other. But this is the area I want. From the inside forward, that's where I want him to go. And you'll see Messi staying on the outside, still kind of more inside than he's been in other situations. Starts making a run because Hamsik goes back. If Hamsik is the aggressive one, if he's making this run, Messi is going to stay out wide, or just... Messi's probably not even going to make a run. He'll just stand in position out here if the AI was telling Hamsik to make this run. So they can't both occupy this, right? It's not like Hamsik's going to do this and Messi's going to do, you know, this forward run. They can't make runs off of each other. There's no connections between their players. It's just, you know, standalone movements. Now this here is almost exactly what I played last year, and it's exactly what I want from a game, except it doesn't work. And we're going to talk about that. Now, the reason why I like the false nine, it's not a point for this video. I'm going to make another video on formations and explain it there. But I really like the connections and the triangles you get between the players, you know, as a real quick primer, you know. Dybala dropping off creates space for them to move inside, and then you get these neat little passing lanes. You can do like these triangles you can see are starting to form because he's dropping off into space. It's not like he's great at playing through balls from the forward position, but once he drops off, then you've got this nice little connection. There's tons of things like that across the field. Similar concepts in most cases, but that's why I like playing this formation. It's just got really unique triangles and connections between the players. So what happened last year was Rolfo would attack on the outside, or, you know, I had overlapping fullbacks. The instruction was called overlap last year instead of attacking wingback. So they would get on the outside, which pushes these players forward, which in turn pushes him back, which kind of pushes these forward. Not as much. It would happen sometimes, but the case was still the same last year, where if these players were attacking, these players were not making this run. So even last year, like, this is not necessarily a new problem this year, it's just much worse. But they've never in any FIFA really, or at least modern FIFAs, they've never been able to make runs off of each other like that. And it's only the fact that you had overlapping fullbacks that ever made these players push forward, or push inside, rather. If I had inverted, then, you know, the wingers would just stay on the outside entire game, no matter what, all the time. If I had defensive, where they're not really getting downfield at all, they just stayed back, they would sometimes cut inside, but most of the time just hold the wing. So it's the fact that I had the overlap that ever caused the formation to get into the shape that I wanted and push these players inside. Now this still works this year. The attacking wingback is a worse role than the overlap of last year, which is really frustrating, but it still does the same idea, except I can't have these players be attacking basically at all. So I can't do the attack instruction. The roaming one works okay, but what actually ends up happening on roaming is they kind of go play this it's almost like the wide winger instruction, where they'll just move outside and occupy the space that the fullback is normally occupying. And so it's up to you if you want to build, you know, this kind of, if you want these 5 attackers instead of these 5 attackers. I mean, that kind of makes sense. You might have better players on the ball with the midfielders than your fullbacks, right? You'd think, yeah, maybe I don't really want my fullbacks in, far up the field because they're not going to be as good at dribbling as the midfielders or good at passing, all of that stuff. It makes sense. But I like having, this movement down here to have these little inside lanes, right? That's why I like the formation. But it just doesn't work. You cannot have them be aggressive at all, especially when I had false back instead of attacking wing back on the fullbacks, because what was happening then was in almost all situations, they were pushing up to play the position that the midfielders should actually be occupying, and then the midfielders were actually stepping up and playing the positions that the attackers should be occupying. So they just stayed wide forever, no matter what. And the inside movement of those fullbacks caused this, which caused this. Which is so frustrating. Because again, what I actually want is both this and this at the same time. That's what I want from my instructions. That's what this should be saying, right? But they can't make runs off of each other again. If one player is occupying the space, you will not get somebody else to occupy that same space. So when you're building your own formations, this is what I want you to think about, because I've got another example. On the Shadow Striker instruction, they're not programmed really to cut inside. They're just kind of more up and down players up here. They do an okay job of, getting up and down the field at the wide area, and you get some decent connections, passing like back that way to the cam. But again, they basically never make that run inside. Even with the attacking wingback supposedly encouraging them to cut inside, this movement never happened because this guy was already occupying the space, which is, again, so frustrating. I want this movement to take priority and cause this player to go somebody else. What actually happens is this movement takes priority and this guy just never, ever got forward. I could not believe attacking wingback plus, he's got the roll plus, right? Never made the movement whatsoever at all, genuinely. It just did not happen. Unless I was already controlling this guy and just dribbled with him this way, and that opened up space down the field. Infuriating. Just absolutely infuriating that they don't build a game where your players can make runs off of each other. Blows my mind that the attacking AI this year is worse than ever. But when you're building your formations, again, this is what I want you to think about. Now, another formation I've tried out this year is the 4-3-2-1, but trying to play it in the same way as the 4-3-3 wide, right? Or the 4-3-3 holding, where it's the same concept. These players are cutting inside, these ones are overlapping and forcing them to cut inside, and the center mids are staying. Some are relatively useful, sometimes being the ones to move forward, but also kind of holding down your creative play from deep, right? And in this formation, in contrast to that 4-2-3-1, every single time one of the fullbacks would make a run. Every single time. Now, it did not do both of them, no matter what. If this player was making a run, and if Rolfo was making a run, Kimmich wasn't. If Kimmich was, then Rolfo wasn't, no matter what. The attacking AI just isn't programmed to have multiple players on the field making runs at the same time. So frustrating. That's another point. And FIFA's always been kind of like that. It's not necessarily an issue this year. They just, the attacking AI will only move one guy at a time. But again, no matter what, at least one of them was overlapping, because the cam in this one is registered as slightly more of an inside forward than in the 4-2-3-1, which is blocking off this movement, right? Because they're inside, it allows this to happen. Now, my cam's instructions were kind of broken, even though I wasn't using Rafinha. This was Francescoli, who also has Shadow Striker ++, so it should be the ++ role that's really beneficial. But again, it was just prioritizing the playmaker attack of the center mids instead. So these players, even with, again, that ++, they should be getting forward. They just kind of stood here and did nothing for me, while this movement happened and this movement happened. Which again, so frustrating. I'm going to keep saying that. Frustrating, because this is just not how any football you watch in real life works. It's not like only one player can make a run at a time. You're trying to make runs off of what your other players are doing. That's what I want. That's what the creativity is. That's where you have some of the skill difference between, certain players, where like you can see things happening before they happen and understand, if I move this guy over here, then that's going to create other passing lanes, right? No. So if you're trying to run a formation where these players are getting forward, then this one has to be defensive. If you're trying to have this player be attacking, then you just have to admit or accept that this guy's going to be wide all the time. If you want to have this guy instead of over here, if you want to have him over there, you have to accept that no matter what, Kimmich is not, your fullback's not going to get up into that space. Just unbelievably coded. I cannot genuinely understand that they gave us this whole excitement. Look at this new attacking AI, FC IQ, all of this stuff, and they're like, look at how much better the game's going to be, and they've made it leagues worse than it used to be. I believe that fully, wholeheartedly, 100%. This is the worst the attacking AI has ever been, but you can make it a little bit better by just making sure your instructions are not occupying the same spaces as each other. Okay, and for what it's worth, at the end of this one here, this current setup is the best one I've found yet so far. I'm the happiest with it throughout everything I've tried this year. It seems like the best formation yet for me. Am I perfectly happy with it? No. Am I going to find one that I'm perfectly happy with? In this game, probably not. And I feel like EA sets it up that way on purpose. But that's a topic for another video. Let me know in the comments if you want me to go off about that. But they set up this game in a way that's not meant to be ideal for any type of way of playing. Anyway, the inside forward on roaming, as I was talking about before, they're not as aggressive with just attacking directly from their base position out wide, just running straight forward. So sometimes they'll linger and then make a little more diagonal run inside. The attacking, because they're on roaming and they're not just occupying that space out wide, the attacking wingbacks will sometimes overlap. It's not guaranteed every single time, but you'll get it a decent amount of times. The box-to-box is pretty much the same. You won't always be getting, we'll show the, here. You won't always be getting them moving all the way up forward because they're covering some spaces back, further back in the field as well. So sometimes they'll be the ones making the run, sometimes your wingbacks will be the ones making the run, sometimes the wide mids will be. And I'm okay with that as kind of a balance. It doesn't have to be the same player only making one run. So, as much as I'd like always pretty much having, in a way, because they're more effective attackers, as much as I'd like having these players in the cutting inside role every single time, there's sometimes where it's more effective for this one to make the run, right? So that's okay. It is wild how much of a change just box-to-box has been over Playmaker. All of a sudden, these players would only occupy the space forward, and these players would, the wingers would never cut inside. Box-to-box, this one singular change that doesn't seem like it should impact that much. Just completely different shape and structure for the whole team. I'm able to hold on to possession a little bit more. I've got more options and more passing lanes for a lot of my players, and they're not all just kind of running into spaces that are not being attacked very well because I only have so many players getting forward. So this is the best I've found so far. You are, of course, limited or a little bit under threat by having your wingbacks pushing forward all the time, so you have to make sure you're a competent enough defender to just defend with your two center backs and your CDM. But if you can manage that, then I definitely recommend giving this a go. Just frustrating that, I guess I spent all that time doing the Playmaker Plus because that's the type of center mid I want to use the most. You think your Odegaards and your Pirlos and Javis and all that, they're probably all Playmaker Plus, right? Frustrating that that you're so limited. What, I can now only ever use box-to-box players here? That's frustrating. But it is what it is. The code's going to be up at the top of the screen there. Do hope you enjoyed this video once again, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy, y'all.